Hello, and welcome back to Talking Torah Tidbits and Taboos with Libby. I'm struggling a little bit with how to start the episode because the topic I was originally planning on doing is a fairly easy one to start, but having just ended Shavuos a few days ago, I thought a better topic would be the difficulty of family around Chagim and holidays and events. It's a fairly tricky topic I don't think I've heard enough people talk about. I've heard a lot of mentions of it in passing where someone is very stressed about their in-laws coming to them for Chag, or if their parents are coming to them for Chag. It's very understandable. We've heard the societally acceptable versions of those where mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamics are difficult to navigate, and mother and daughter relationships are difficult to navigate. And especially when you are married and you have two sides of a family and your husband might want his side to join you for Chag, or you want your parents to join for Chag and your husband might have difficulty with that. Your husband wants to go to his family. You want to go to your family. I've always thought of those topics to be fairly acceptable as long as they're said with a joke, because it's hard to face. And as a society who is very family oriented and family focused, holiday season and family events are not something that is handled or discussed in the most conducive way for people to allow themselves to be vulnerable. A lot of assumptions are made where, oh, you're going to your parents? You haven't gone to your parents? When are you going to your parents? What do you mean you haven't been to your parents since you got married? What do you mean you haven't been to your in-laws since you got married? Your husband doesn't want to go to his parents. You don't want to go to your parents. There's a lot of judgment and a lot of preconceived notions that people have about what holidays and events are supposed to look like. If someone doesn't want to go to their sibling's wedding, what do you mean? Why wouldn't they want to go? Of course they want to go. It's their sibling's wedding. But the truth is that most of us struggle, and most of us have family dynamics that might not be easy to navigate. Personally, I am someone who is not particularly close with my family. I'm not particularly close with my parents. I'm not constantly in contact with them. They're not what everyone thinks of when people think of mother-daughter, father-daughter relationships. I'm one of the youngest of a very large family. I'm not particularly close with most of my siblings. And that's a truth that I have, that I am someone who does not have an idealistic, beautiful, normal, healthy, regular family. And I use those very facetiously because the truth is that it is normal. A lot of us have complicated family dynamics. A lot of us have family members we struggle to have respect our boundaries. We have family members that might not share the same values as us and might not be respectful of our values. We might have family members who are abusive. We might have family members who struggle with mental illness, who are very much not people that you feel your children might be safe around, you might not feel safe around. And those are also parts of life. Those are normal, because even if I personally, and I use this as a royal I, as in a we, even though we might not have it in our family, we know of someone who does. It might not be me. It might not be my friend. But my friend might have told me about someone who has an abusive father, someone who has an abusive uncle, someone who has a very unhealthy mother, someone who they've been struggling to set boundaries with for a very long time. And that makes it normal. Because while we might not talk about it enough, we all have heard of it. I don't think we've heard enough of it in a real way. And the holidays have very much been something that has brought this to the forefront of my mind, where there is so much guilt placed on us by societal expectations of what our families are supposed to be, where I feel guilty saying that I don't want X, Y, and Z family member to come. I don't want to go to X, Y, and Z family member because I just don't want to. Especially when the conversations happen around holidays and events where people are almost forceful about their assumption that you're going to a family member. But there are lots of us who struggle with our family. So when someone asks you, oh, are you going to your parents for the Chag? Are you going to your in-laws for the Chag? When someone doesn't answer that they are, there's almost a shock or horror because what do you mean? Of course you're going. And there's a lot of shame around that. I'm someone who, I'm fairly open about it, where people ask me and I say, no, I'm not going to X, Y, and Z family member. I'm not going to my parents for Chag because I prefer to be where I am. But what do you mean? Of course you're supposed to go to your parents. But who is the person that's deciding where we're supposed to be going? And for any of you who feel like you're supposed to be doing something and it feels like you're not doing it right because people keep putting that pressure on you and saying, oh, so are you going to them? Why don't you go to them more? You should go to them more. I'm here to tell you that you are not the only one. You're not the only one by a long shot. I have a good friend who I remember the first time she shared with me that she has a complicated relationship with her mother. And the shame around it and the embarrassment that she felt because of some of her personal or her mother's personal shortcomings in their relationship, she was embarrassed to tell me, and she asked me not to tell anyone. And I said, of course I'm not going to tell anyone, but I want you to know that there's a lot of us who struggle with that. Mother-daughter relationships are very complicated. We are people who spend years developing under the care of our mother. Or some of us don't grow up under the care of our mother. And that affects us too. Because those are years and minutes and hours and months and weeks spent with the same person. And every relationship we have in our life is complex. Especially the more involved they are. The more close you are, the more intimate it is, the more complicated the relationship is. And holidays seem like they're for the perfect families. I remember when I shared with someone that I hate Simchas Torah when I was single. And they said, what do you mean? Why? I said, because what am I doing there? I'm going to shul to watch a whole bunch of men dancing around in a circle. I'm one of the youngest in my family. I don't have younger siblings that I'm there to watch or pass over to my father. I'm there by myself. I have no one to be watching. And why am I just standing there staring? This doesn't feel like a place for me. And I was talking about it with my friend. And she said someone had mentioned to her that Simchas Torah is a holiday meant for picture-perfect families. It's not a holiday for families who are divorced. It's not a holiday for families who are separated. It's not a holiday for people who are orphans. It's not a holiday for people who are struggling with fertility. It is not a holiday that is for single people. And of course, in the religious sense, it's a holiday about celebrating Torah. But when we go to shul, that's a large part of the holiday, where we watch these seemingly picture-perfect couples with smiles on their faces, handing the babies over. The wives are handing the babies over to the husband is handing the baby back to the wife. They're throwing the babies in the air. All of the kids are wearing the perfect matching outfits, and the wife looks gorgeous and stunning. They look like they were ready for this, and everything went smoothly for them that morning. It doesn't look like they struggled to get all their kids together and bring them to the shul. Being someone who doesn't have that dynamic in their family makes being there in shul so much more difficult. And that's something public. And that's incredibly difficult. But what about the private holidays where we're in the same house with the same people, spending hours and hours and hours together with people who are we have complicated relationships with, because there are siblings, there are in-laws, there are parents, there are spouses, there are kids. It's difficult. And if someone hasn't said that in your life, you've made it through some incredibly difficult holidays. Kudos. Because they are hard. And family is not easy. Family is not picturesque. Family is not simple. Family is not perfect. But it is normal that it's not perfect. And it's normal that it's difficult. And a lot of people hate the holiday season and hate family events because they dread going to anything involving their families. Because some people don't have religious relatives. Some people have relatives who make their lives extremely difficult. Some people have relatives who question every decision that they make. And I think a very quintessential example is the daughter-in-law in the mother-in-law's house. I thank God I have a wonderful relationship with my mother-in-law, and I'm very blessed to have the relationship that I do. A lot of daughters-in-law are very much stuck and frozen whenever they're in their mother-in-law's space. They're walking on eggshells. Their mother-in-law is the person that raised their husband, has so much say in their lives, it seems, and you're in their space or they're in your space and they have a lot of opinions. You're doing the dishes wrong. You made the dish differently than my mother made it. And you have different traditions because you're building your own home. And some mothers-in-law are not great. They're difficult. They make life so hard. And they just inflict so much hardship onto their daughters-in-law, their sons-in-law, whoever it may be. Some people are difficult people. Some people you would never want to be friends with. And some people you would never want to be friends with, and they're in your family. I know that I've been seeing a lot online how there's a lot of these harmful old parenting sayings. And one of them was, I love you, but I don't like you. And it's something that I haven't truly understood. I've had a friend who we talked about it, that it depends on the context. But for some odd reason, that was unilaterally given over as one of those old school parenting sayings that are harmful to kids. I'm going to own that I don't know why that it's harmful. If someone wants to let me know why, I'm more than happy to learn. I concluded with my friend that I think it's very much dependent on context, but I can understand somewhat. I think it's hard because I grew up with it, that I don't necessarily know what might be harmful about it. So we all grew up with that saying where I love you, but I don't like you. And it's true. But what about the family that we really can't bring ourselves to love? We for sure do not like them. We might even hate them. But you're in a society, especially as someone who's from where everyone asks you all the time questions about your family. Where do you come from? How many siblings do you have? Where do your parents live? Do they live here? Do you go to them? Do you spend time with them? Do you go to them for Hagim? And it's something that I've had to deal with a lot over the years because my answer was, nope, they don't live here. No, I don't really go to them for Shabbos. No, I'm not going to them for this Chag. I haven't gone to them for most Chagim, but that's just me. And a lot of the times the reaction is, well, why not? Are you planning on going next? Like, when are you going next? And I came to the realization that the reason why people answer like that is because of a misunderstanding about the definition of empathy. The misunderstanding about empathy is that empathy is not trying to relate to a person's situation based on what you would do in their shoes. Empathy is trying to understand why someone does something by putting yourself in their shoes. Where someone is asking, why are you not going to your parents? Because they themselves are saying, well, I would go to my parents. But empathy is saying, she doesn't want to go to her parents. Oh, she must not be going to her parents because it's difficult for her. Rather than putting herself or themselves in your shoes, they're staying in theirs. And they're trying to shift the perspective of the conversation by applying their perspective with your answer, which is never going to add up to empathy, because empathy requires both the answer and the rationale on the same side. Because I want to understand where you're coming from. When someone answers like that, I think it's more a lack of understanding, because they themselves would never make the decisions that you did. And thank God, some people have never had to make the difficult decision of cutting people out of their lives, or of disengaging with people, of putting up boundaries, of distancing yourself, of limiting interactions, of cutting people off. And so they would never understand. And that's not to say that you want them to understand. But this hopefully is a way for other people to understand and to put it out there that making an assumption and then being shocked that you're not getting the answer that you expected and being bothered by it can cause a lot of people to really struggle. There's a lot of guilt around all of the decisions that we make about our family, healthy or otherwise, because family is difficult. Holidays especially, and family events, are even more difficult because they're extended amounts of time where everyone else is doing what you're doing, and it seems like they're doing it with ease. But most of these holidays can be very isolating for a lot of people, because we talk about how, oh yeah, it's very normal that someone doesn't have such a great dynamic with their mother-in-law. But what about someone who doesn't have a great relationship with her mother-in-law, but all of her sisters-in-law that married into the family have a great relationship with her? Or it may not be a great relationship with her, but they tolerate so much more than you. That's a guilty feeling we have, where we say, why can't I do it if they do it? And, well, they had her for a long chag. Why can't I? Because we're not them. And just because one person can handle it doesn't mean you have to force yourself to try to do it too. Because it doesn't make us weak for not being able to handle certain family members. And it is very much okay to not be the person that is close with your families, because don't we believe that God gives us every struggle we have in our lives? We didn't choose to go through the things that we do. And I'm sure there's going to be someone who thinks, oh, wait, no, but we did because before we came down, I'm not talking about that. No one here with the knowledge that we have would say, yeah, I chose this so I can make my life more complicated. Because it's so much easier, it seems, to just have a normal family. To have a family that enjoys hanging out with each other, that spends a lot of time together, that all talk to each other all the time. But it's hard. And your life can be extremely full even without those relationships. But if they're not, that makes it so much harder. Because when everyone else is so excited to spend time by their parents' house so they don't have to cook, or so excited to spend time out of town so someone can watch their kids, for someone else, that might be their personal idea of torture. Because family is hard. And holidays are not an easy time for most people. So if you walked away from this Chag and thought that was a very difficult holiday, and everyone else is coming back going, yeah, talking about their cooking and talking about how they're tired, and it's so weird because I thought I would have a Sunday, and having to prep for Chag on a Sunday is so hard. If you had an extremely difficult Chag because of your family, I'm so sorry. It must have been extremely difficult. And you made it through. And you're not alone in this. Because a lot of us are going through a similar thing. Some people are willing to put up with more. But you can't blame yourself for choosing you. And however that may look, you don't owe anyone in your family more than you can give. And whatever you can give, that's enough. And just because someone can give more doesn't mean that you have to give more. Because we're all different. We've all been through different things. Everyone's relationship with their family is extremely different. And it is complicated. For some people, the idea of going to family is both good and bad. And they both can be true at the same time. Because you want to be around family. But family is complicated. And it's complicated for a lot of people. So it's hard. And you made it through. And if your decision is that you can't be in contact with your family, or you can't go to them for Chagim, you're not alone in that. And for anyone who does have an easier time with their family, the next time that you hear someone say, oh yeah, I'm not going to my parents, and you might not notice them talking about their family very often, or you might notice that they don't at all, or they talk about them a lot, be mindful of your reactions, because we know what everyone else is thinking. We've heard it all before. It's a conversation that gets repeated every time in small talk, especially around Chagim time, and especially immediately after. And just because when you're in someone's situation, you wouldn't have made the same choice they did, doesn't make their choice any less valid. So I thought I would take this episode immediately following Shavuos as an opportunity to say to all the people who have difficult family dynamics and who struggle to be around your family, or struggle to face all the people, or to answer all those questions that you get asked around Chagim time, I see you. And it is so difficult. And you made it through, and you've made it through many more before now. And every decision that you make is valid. And it is normal. And for the people who might not be struggling with family dynamics, and holidays might not be so complicated, when it comes to your dynamics within your relationships and your family, please be mindful of the people who might not be in the same situation as you, and to have empathy. And remember that empathy requires you to put yourself in their shoes, using their understanding of their situation and their rationale, and why they gave you the answer that they did. And to be mindful of that. And to be mindful of the guilt and the societal pressure and the implications that come with having complicated family dynamics, and to be supportive and to help ease some of the guilt that come around a lot of the questions that we hear, especially around Chagim time and especially around Shabbosim. So for any of you who might have needed to hear this, you are not alone. And hopefully through this conversation and through every other conversation I have on my podcast, we can help bridge some of the gaps in the lack of awareness and the lack of conversation around a lot of these topics and a lot of the difficulties that we all go through, and hope to help each of us feel more normal in whatever sense you want it to mean, and to help us feel seen, to help me feel seen, to help you feel seen, and know that we're all going through something, and we're all normal, and we're all doing the best that we can, and that's all that we can hope for. So keep doing your best, and thank you again for listening.